and on the petition of Fluoride-Free New Zealand. Reports of the Petitions Committee on the petition of Alistair Rees, the petition of Benjamin Plaus-Kolf, the petition of Jenny McArdle and the petition of Shinichi Yamada.
The clerk has been informed of the introduction of two bills.
English Language Bill, Introduction. Environment, Disestablishment of the Ministry for the Environment Amendment Bill, Introduction.
Those bills are set down for first reading. The House now comes to oral questions. The first in the name of Cameron Brewer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Finance and asks, what is the Treasury's recommended ceiling for New Zealand's net core crown debt?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Mr. Speaker, in 2022, the Treasury recommended some fiscal rules to the government, including a ceiling for net core crown debt. The idea is to maintain net debt at a prudent level while providing headroom to respond to economic shocks and natural disasters. After thorough analysis and modelling, Treasury's recommendation was for a net core crown debt ceiling of 50% of GDP. Finance Minister Grant Robertson accepted that recommendation, and so have I. The ceiling is getting close. Net core crown debt is expected to rise to 46.9% in the 28-29 fiscal year before beginning to fall. In public forums, Treasury Secretary Ian Rennie has frequently discussed the need to bend the public debt curve down, as is the case in the plans which the government is forecasting.
Supplementary. What does this debt ceiling mean in practice?
Mr. Speaker, it means that the government of the day should keep net core crown debt below 50% of GDP in normal circumstances and over the long term. It's possible, of course, that debt may rise above the ceiling after a significant shock or natural disaster. In that case, the government should reduce net debt over time to bring it back below the 50% mark again as soon as possible. There is, of course, Mr. Speaker, a big difference between experiencing a global financial crisis or a major earthquake with low debt and lots of headroom, as New Zealand has done over the last decade or two, or the alternative, experiencing those events with debt already over 50% of GDP, which would be far more challenging.
Supplementary. How does the debt ceiling relate to the government's long-term fiscal objectives for debt?
Well, Mr. Speaker, as I said, the government has acknowledged that 50% of GDP should be considered the upper bound for net debt in normal times. But a ceiling is not a target, and debt can rise quickly. It went up more than 20% of GDP in just 6 years under the previous government. The current government's objective is therefore to have net debt lower than the ceiling, with a long-term objective to get it to under 40% of GDP over time. Lower debt puts New Zealand in a much better position to deal with inevitable challenges, and also means we're not spending as much on interest payments.
Supplementary. What does the debt ceiling mean for infrastructure investment?
Mr. Speaker, New Zealand has clear infrastructure needs as set out in the plan released by the Infrastructure Commission today. These include for social infrastructure such as hospitals and schools. In Budget 2025, for example, the government made a capital investment of more than $1 billion in hospitals and health facilities, including a major redevelopment of Nelson Hospital. Having a debt ceiling strengthens the focus on borrowing for long-term investment and capital projects that support people in the economy rather than consumption of day-to-day expenses. We'll be at that point when the government's books are back in surplus. And of course, the debt target strengthens the focus on prioritising the right projects at the right scale and making sure the system is set up to deliver projects in a timely fashion. Mr. Speaker, for example, the allocation of funds to Middlemore Hospital, lauded by Jacinda Ardern in 2017, well, that project's only commencing now, which is to say writing the cheque and issuing the press release isn't enough. You actually have to get it delivered.
Just before I call the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins, I'll just make it clear that rare and reasonable interjections only. And if there are questions, as people appear to be asking, then they should use the supplementary process. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins, question 2.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. To the Prime Minister, does he stand by all of his government statements and actions?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Supplementary. Why didn't the government consider any renewable energy alternatives to meet New Zealand's energy security needs, opting instead for a multi-billion-dollar gas import facility that all Kiwi households will pay for through his proposed new gas tax?
Oh, well, look, as we discussed last week, this is about lowering power bills, and what this means is that every Kiwi will have a lower power bill because of the optionality created about LNG importation. If the member is confused about a tax, it's called a capital gains tax, it's called a wealth tax, a trust tax, a death tax, increasing income tax and corporate tax. We're not doing that.
Supplementary question.
Just wait for the House to settle itself.
Why is importing expensive gas from overseas a better way to provide energy security for New Zealand than using locally produced energy that would create Kiwi jobs and retain value and investment here in New Zealand?
Well, I thank the member for their question, because he was the single biggest contributor to the energy situation we have in New Zealand, and this is a government that is doing and. We can do multiple things at the same time, so we can put aside $200 million to co-invest with people wanting to look for domestic gas. We can send a message to our mom companies if they want thermal or firming energy. We'll follow our money in that regard. And we can also make sure that we create optionality by having an LNG importation facility as a backup supply when we need it, coupled with a strategic coal reserve at the back of Huntly, along with a huge renewables boom that's taking place in this country.
Supplementary question, Mr Speaker.
Point of order, the Honourable David Seymour.
I just wonder if you consider it parliamentary for members to yell out, "Tell the truth," while a member is answering a question, implying that they're not.
Very hurtful.
It's not parliamentary to question the honesty of anyone in the House. All members are taken at their word as honourable members. I didn't actually hear that comment, but thank you for the timely reminder. The Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Supplementary. How does imposing a new gas tax to pay for a new gas import facility that might never be used, so that New Zealand can import gas that's more expensive than locally available alternatives, reduce power bills for New Zealand households?
Well, thanks to Labor, we ended up with 800 megawatts per hour cost of electricity in 2024. And if we put an importation facility in place, that just gives us more optionality. But I just want to reassure the member, because I appreciate his line of questioning. Emissions in the September quarter were in fact the lowest recorded since 2010. And of course that was driven by renewable energy. And what drove renewable energy? Fast-track legislation, which he failed to support. In fact, there were weeks where we were at 98% renewables thanks to this government. We're on track to meet our emissions budgets. He doesn't need to worry.
Supplementary question. If fast-track is driven...
This calling out from both sides of the House has got to stop. It's unreasonable and certainly doesn't give the public the information that the opposition want them to have.
If fast-track has driven an uptake in renewable energy, can he name one single renewable energy generation project that has been completed and brought to market under fast-track?
Well, we have about 40% extra generation of projects listed in our fast-track program. You've already seen 9 projects delivered already. We've probably got another 9 delivered before the end of March. But I just want to say to the member, with respect to the LNG importation facility, this is a government that actually...
Point of order, the Right Honourable Chris Hipkins.
Mr Speaker, it was a direct supplementary question related to a claim the Prime Minister made about how fast-track had brought new renewable energy into the market that was lowering the price. It wasn't about the LNG import facility. It was very specific about the new projects. He clearly can't name one, so surely that's the end of the answer.
Well, I think the Prime Minister might want to consider the question again. So ask the question again, and an answer, if it can be given, will be given in the public interest.
Can he name one single new electricity generation project that has been approved under fast track and is now producing electricity?
What I can tell the members, about 22 renewable projects that are in fast track legislation, adding about 30 to 40% more generation. We get on and get things done. We don't take 10 years to build a wind farm, 8 years to get it consented, 2 years to build it. We actually can do things much faster than that. So the good news is, to the member, I know he's very concerned about electricity prices. The good news is we've got a renewables boom up and going in this country. It's absolutely fantastic. We're creating thermal and firming energy options, and we appreciate his support, not for fast track.
Supplementary question. How can importing gas guarantee lower bills when overseas gas is more expensive and tied to volatile global markets?
It's less expensive than $800 per megawatt hour, which is what that member left this government, because he failed to manage energy. So I just say to him, this is going to deliver about $50 off Kiwis' power bills. It's about $1.2 billion worth to the economy, and it's going to create about 2,000 jobs. It's all good news.
Supplementary question. Is the Turkish company who expressed interest in supplying New Zealand with an LNG import option wrong when they said that the government's plan to build an LNG import facility will put upwards pressure on New Zealand gas prices?
As I've said to the member last week, and again, I appreciate his questioning on energy policy, given how abysmally he ran it. We have a $50 lowering of power bills for New Zealanders. We're in the middle of a procurement process. That will be the results will be determined at the middle of the year. We'll then start the construction of the facility, have it available in the back end of 27, early 28.
Supplementary question. Why didn't the government consider expanding the rollout of solar and batteries to provide cheaper, more secure electricity for Kiwi businesses and households, as they've done in Australia, when in the last year alone, 180,000 batteries have been installed?
Well, again, we're seeing a renewables boom in this country, and that's in part because we've got the regulatory settings right. With fast-track legislation, it's absolutely fantastic. People are wanting to build renewable projects. We have overseas investors, local capital, all wanting to sign up for solar, geothermal, wind. That's all good stuff.
Question number 2, the Honourable. Question number 2, when the Labour front bench are ready for it. Question number 2, the Honourable Marama Davidson.
I te mangai. Ki te Premier, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Believe that it is a core responsibility of government to protect its people and to deal with climate-charged weather events.
Yes, in part answer the first question, absolutely. We've got to look after our New Zealanders.
Does increasing climate-changing emissions worsen the severity of extreme weather events like we are once again seeing across Aotearoa, New Zealand this week?
Oh, well, what I want to reassure the member, as I said in my answer to the previous question, emissions in the September quarter were in fact the lowest recorded since 2010. That, of course, has been driven by a renewable energy boom, which has been facilitated by Fast Track, which that member failed to support.
Does he agree that Aotearoa New Zealand has a responsibility to play our part in the global effort to reduce emissions?
Yes, and that's what we're doing, and that's why we're delivering on our emissions reductions budgets.
Does he stand by the statement of Emergency Management Minister Mark Mitchell with regard to the storm people have just experienced that, quote, "There's nothing we can do about the weather"?
Well, what I would say to the member is that I can tell you if the Greens pitch is that give them another chance and global weather will improve, that's just not true.
When ministers in his government say we can't do anything about the impacts of weather, is he suggesting that he is powerless to reduce emissions, strengthen resilience and better prepare communities from climate-charged storms and floods?
No, but what this government doesn't do is just talk about climate change. We actually put the investments in place and we actually put the actions in place. And that's why you're seeing why you're seeing emissions at the lowest level since 2010. We've put $200 million into stop banks and flood resilience. We're building back roads that are twice as resilient to floods, and that's all a good thing.
Question 4, Katie Nimmin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Infrastructure. What reports has he seen on New Zealand's infrastructure?
The Honourable Chris Bishop.
Mr. Speaker, today the New Zealand Infrastructure Commission released the National Infrastructure Plan, and I want to congratulate Raveen, Jeff and the team at the Commission. What is clear, Mr. Speaker, is that our system is underperforming. We have real challenges ahead. We spend a lot on infrastructure, around 5.8% of GDP annually. It's one of the highest in the OECD, but we rank toward the bottom for efficiency, and we are fourth to last in the OECD for asset management. Many central government agencies do not understand what they own or have long-term investment plan. The assurance system for new projects is weak and does not give ministers confidence that we are getting good value for money. New Zealanders and taxpayers deserve better. That's why the government welcomes today's plan.
Supplementary. What does the National Infrastructure Plan say?
Mr Speaker, the plan puts forward 16 recommendations under 4 key themes. They are planning what we can afford, looking after what we've got, prioritising the right projects and making it easier to build better. On page 16, the plan visualises the National Infrastructure Pipeline on a map, so New Zealanders in the sector can see what projects are coming. It's broken down by region, funding status and sector. Sometimes people say what New Zealand needs is an infrastructure pipeline, and it turns out we actually have one and have had one for many years. The plan also outlines 10 priority actions for the decade ahead. And it is good to see, Mr Speaker, that many of the key actions that are decade-long priorities include things that the government already has underway. We are statutorily compelled to respond to the plan in June 2026, and we will be doing that.
Supplementary. Why is a national infrastructure plan important?
Mr Speaker, creating a 30-year plan for infrastructure is something that many people have said around the country have said that we need for a long time. The reality is infrastructure is long-lived, and it spans across governments of whatever different stripe and many decades. We've made a good start over the last 2 years, sir, in fixing the basics of our system, but it is really clear from the plan there is a lot more to do. As part of that, we will be engaging, sir, with the opposition parties around the government response to the plan. I've written to Parliament's Business Committee today asking for a special debate to be held in the regular slot around the plan that has now come out, and there will be opportunity for future debate as well. We owe it to all New Zealanders to lift our game on infrastructure because it is in all of our interests.
Supplementary question, Chloe Swarbrick.
Will the Minister ask Cabinet to revisit its $1 billion investment that the government has planned in the LNG import facility when the Infrastructure Commission today was clear that, quote, new renewable generation can lower average prices and reduces reliance on imported fuels, end quote, and that this LNG facility will likely not lower household bills?
Mr Speaker, the LNG facility the government is in the process of procuring is critical to crowding in future renewable investment generation, because when the lakes are low, the rain doesn't fall and the sun doesn't shine, and well, the simple reality is we have a highly renewable, vulnerable system. You need the backup of gas or thermal electricity in order to have the highly renewable system that we have. And that is why we are procuring essentially an insurance policy to make sure that people who are investing in renewables can make sure that that investment will work as a result of these policies.
Supplementary.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
The Infrastructure Commission has paid sufficient attention to the growing coal use in China.
Mr Speaker, it would be fair to say that coal use in China is tangentially connected to the Infrastructure Commission report, but I am aware that it is definitely growing.
Katie Newman.
How is the government tracking against the plan?
Mr Speaker, there are 10 priorities for the decade ahead, and the government is making good progress. For example, they say that we should implement time of use charging and fleet-wide road user charges. The government has passed legislation for both those things, or is in the process of passing legislation. They say that we should commit to a durable resource management framework, and of course, as all members know, we have introduced legislation to replace the RMA. They say, Mr Speaker, that the government should ensure that transport investments or housing growth follows transport investments, and of course the Parliament has legislated for upzoning around City Rail link stations in Auckland. I encourage all members to read the top 10 priorities for the year ahead and join the journey of improving New Zealand's infrastructure.
The Honourable Barbara Edmonds, question 5.
Vinaka Vakalevu, Mr Speaker. To the Minister of Finance, does she stand by her statement in July 2024 that, quote, the cost of living relief is on its way, unquote? If so, have prices come down since then?
The Honourable Nicola Willis.
Well, Mr Speaker, yes, and it is a curious statement for the member to highlight, as it was made 2 days before personal income tax changes came into effect. I went on to say, quote, from Wednesday you will be able to keep more of your hard-earned money to put towards things that are important to you. Since then, around 1.9 million New Zealand households have benefited by an average of $60 more a fortnight. Cost of living relief, Mr Speaker, that was opposed by that member. To the second part of the question, since 2002, successive governments have had a target for annual CPI inflation of between 1% and 3%. I'm not aware of it being the position of any party in Parliament to target negative inflation or price decreases in real terms. We do now have low and stable inflation after a terrible period in which it stayed out of band for 3 years out of the last government, and which peaked with overall prices rising more than 7% a year.
Supplementary. Does that mean food prices are cheaper or more expensive?
Mr Speaker, what it means is that food price inflation has come under a lot more control on this government's watch than under the last. For comparison, Mr Speaker, in September 2023, quarterly food price inflation was 8.8%. Mr Speaker, it is a lot lower now. Also, in June 23, food price inflation was 12.3%. I can quite confidently say, Mr Speaker, it will not hit those numbers again on our watch.
Supplementary. Does a 4.6% increase in food prices over the last year reflect her promise that cost of living relief is on its way?
Well, Mr Speaker, of course I join other members of this House who would like to see food price inflation go even lower still. The point I am making to the member is that food price inflation has been a lot higher in recent times, most markedly under the last government. On our watch, it's been lower.
Well, then, has she broken her promise to get food prices under control when staples like mince is 18% higher and bread is 58% higher and increasingly out of reach for everyday families?
Mr Speaker, ensuring that New Zealanders can meet the costs of their weekly supermarket shop is something this government is very focused on. That is, in part, why we delivered tax relief to help people keep up with growing costs, and it is why we have been so keen to support the Reserve Bank in its fight to keep inflation under control, with our key measure there be keeping our own spending under control. Mr Speaker, the facts speak for themselves. Quarterly food price inflation, December 22, 10.7%, March 23, 11.3%, June 23, 12.3%, September 23, 8.8%. Mr Speaker, on our watch, food price inflation is a lot lower than it was under the last government, and those who are concerned about food price inflation probably need to suggest some clear plans of their own for addressing it, other than telling us the price of mince, which unfortunately many New Zealanders are already very aware of.
Has she been advised, based on her comment in October 2024, that, quote, the era of crushing prices is now over, given household energy prices are already up nearly 18% in 2 years, and now the government is adding an additional tax?
Well, Mr Speaker, the era of crushing price increases in the economy occurred during the 3 years under the last government, where inflation remained out of target, peaking at 7.3%. That era is now over, but we would do well not to take the ending of that era for granted, because those parties who say the solution to every problem is to drive up government spending and borrow risk reawakening the inflation beast. And on this side of the House, we stand firmly against that.
Supplementary. has she been advised with food prices soaring whether the Prime Minister can still do his weekly shop for $60?
Mr Speaker, this follows a trend of recent final supplementary questions from the opposing member in which she gets personal and nasty, and I'm not going to sink to that level.
Question number 6, Tom Rutherford. Mr Jackson. Tom Rutherford.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister of Justice. How is the government committed to fixing the basics in law and order?
The Honourable Paul Goldsmith.
Well, Mr Speaker, the government's fixing the basics in law and I didn't pick that one up, by continuing to progress a broad range of initiatives to restore real consequences for crime and to place victims back at the heart of the justice system. We've reformed the sentencing regime so that those who cause the most harm are imprisoned for longer, given police effective tools to deal with gangs, stopped taxpayer funding for the proliferation of cultural reports, made stalking an illegal and jailable offence, given victims of sexual assault the power to determine if offenders are granted name suppression, restored 3 strikes, and much more.
Supplementary. How is reforming the Crimes Act fixing the basics in law and order?
Well, Mr Speaker, this government's committed to fixing the basics in law and order. As I've said, the Crimes Act Amendment Bill is currently before the Justice Committee. It creates specific offences for assaulting first responders and committing coward punches, Mr Peters, as committed in New Zealand First National Coalition Agreement. It also gives effect to the new citizens' arrest powers and introduces a new shoplifting infringement regime to provide businesses with more protections to stop those who steal from them from getting away with it. Lastly, it strengthens the trafficking and people smuggling laws to stop criminals using loopholes to target our most vulnerable.
What is next on the government's agenda to fix the basics in law and order?
Well, Mr Speaker, the government's considering how to deal more effectively with antisocial and disruptive behaviour that in many places in New Zealand is impacting the everyday enjoyment and utilisation of public spaces. No one, whether you're a retailer or just out there doing your job or living in the CBD, should have to be the subject of unwelcome behaviours of others in public. Those who engage in disorderly or threatening behaviour, who seek to intimidate, to interfere with businesses and others' peaceful use of the CBD will face consequences, Mr Speaker. We'll have more to say about that very shortly.
Supplementary. What measures are in place for the government to track progress of fixing the basics in law and order?
Well, Mr Speaker, the government set an ambitious target upon coming into office to have 20,000 fewer victims of serious violent crime by 2029. And the good news is that as a nation, we're tracking well ahead of that target with 38,000 fewer victims of violent crime today than when we came into office. That's 38,000 families who haven't had to go through the trauma of having their loved ones or individually being the victims of violent crime. Of course, there is much more work to do, and that is why we're committed as a government to restoring law and order in this nation.
Supplementary. Can he confirm that there has been a significant and sustained reduction in child and youth offending?
Yes, indeed. We had set a target there to reduce the number of serious repeat youth offenders, and that is ahead of budget at the moment, thanks to the efforts of our excellent fellow ministers, Karen Shaw and also Nicole McKee, and indeed the entire Justice team, including Mark Mitchell and the indomitable Judith Collins. And together as a government right across the board, we're determined to reduce the number of victims of crime. And if you're the victim of an assault from a young person or an old person, it's the same thing. You're still a victim of assault, and we have to have clear consequences for that.
Question number 7, Dr David Wilson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Oceans and Fisheries. What actions has the government taken to protect rock pools?
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Mr Speaker, consistent with the balanced and proportionately weighted approach I adopt towards marine management, it was with great joy that we've announced a 2-year ban on the taking of invertebrate and seaweed species on the east coast around Hibiscus Coast in northern Auckland. And I want to acknowledge the local MPs who, along with Ngāti Manuhiri, advocated for this decision. It will put an end to the overcollection of marine life from the rock pools, the surrounding coastline. This temporary closure will take effect from March the 12th, 2026, and it will be enforceable by fisheries officers. We are also considering, sir, a range of other tools in terms of safeguarding rock pools and the intertidal zone, such as infringement notices for those who breach the rules.
Supplementary. Why are you putting this temporary ban in place?
Excessive effort. It may not be well known, sir, but we were advised by locals in the Whangaparaoa and Hibiscus Coast area that organised groups of people in that part of Auckland were arriving, including busloads of tourists organised by social media sites, largely visited by immigrants who were acting in a way that has offended the local community. And when the busloads arrive, no rock pool can survive something akin to the Oriental Express.
Supplementary. How will people know about the closures?
It's important, Mr. Speaker, that we use all tools of education. This is an area, this is a subject matter that is a very sensitive, but one that has riled people who live next to the coast who feel that the state is not taking account of how our changing demographic character is leading to people going to the coast without understanding host culture. People from Muriwai, Piha and other parts of New Zealand are overwhelming our officers as they seek for us to provide interventions so we can all enjoy the bounty of Tangaroa and our coastal environment together. Now, some things that one says could be awkward, but this is a case where the matua is well ahead of the Greens.
Supplementary. How will this ban impact aquaculture activities?
Aquaculture activity will continue as it is currently undertaken. This is an area that we want to expand as a part of our industrial food growing program. There are places around the coastline where there are competing interests, but I come back again. A host of Kiwi communities for some years have been waiting for politicians to intervene to ensure that the changing demographic character of our population does not destroy the habits, the traditions and the culture that defines us as Kiwis.
The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Has the Minister seen the usual inane approach by opponents during this time, claiming that he has not included kina or sea eggs in his protection? And what's his response to that?
There is an exemption, Mr. Speaker, for kina. We are struggling around the coastline in a host of different locations to manage the expansion of what is known as kina barren colonisation. Barren, of course, belongs this afternoon with the other side of the House of green complexion.
That's just to point out that you're not meant to use supplementaries to attack the other side of the House. Now that, I think, was not a compliment, so just calm that one down. Question number 8, the Honourable Dr Megan Woods.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is for the Minister of Energy. What analysis, if any, shows that his LNG level model is cheaper over 20 years for households than a program of wind, solar, storage and demand-side management?
The Honourable Simeon Brown.
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Energy, I'm advised that MB assessed 11 options, including renewables, storage and demand response. The analysis found that a renewables and demand-side approach would not solve the dry year problem in a timely manner. A direct comparison was therefore not made with the options suggested by the member. The government concluded that LNG was the best option to ensure energy security and to ensure reduced electricity prices for consumers. This stands in contrast to the previous government's proposed $16 billion Lake Onslow project, which wouldn't have delivered electricity until at least 2037. We're focused on delivering secure, reliable and affordable energy for Kiwis as quickly as possible.
Question. Why did the Concept Consulting modelling released yesterday only compare LNG and no LNG options when MBIE's own analysis shows the illustrative Rankine option is likely to have the greatest benefit in terms of downward price pressure?
Mr. Speaker, the answer to that question is that the analysis found that a renewables and demand-side approach would not solve the dry year problem in a timely manner. And I know while she's here arcing back to the Lake Onslow project, which wouldn't actually solve a problem until 2037. We need energy now. We need fuel now. And that is why this government is so focused on getting an option in place which not only secures the fuel this country needs, but also reduces power bills for consumers. That's what we're delivering.
Supplementary.
Just finish with that. Honourable Megan Woods.
Thank you. Why does the assessments treat the slower delivery of alternatives as critical weaknesses when compared with LNG, when LNG itself is only faster because the government has chosen to fast-track it with bespoke legislation, creating an artificial timing advantage for LNG over the other options?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I'm really proud of Erica Stanford focused on reading, writing and particularly maths, because according to maths, 2027 or 2028 comes before 2037, which is her option. And actually, her option was also $16 billion. So we're not only focused on reducing power bills, but getting it done a whole lot faster so we can have secure energy at lower prices for consumers. And it's not just about making sure we've got the thermal energy that we need, whether it's coal and gas, it's also the renewable energies. We've got a renewable energy boom underway in this country, and Fast Track, which Minister Chris Bishop is very focused on.
Supplementary.
A point of order, the Honourable Megan Woods.
That was a straight question about why one option that the government considered in a list of 11 has been given a fast-track acceleration in terms of the weighting that Cabinet gave it, and wanted to know why the other 10 options weren't also credited with that timing acceleration. It was a pretty straight question, and the Minister didn't even address it.
It's true, but the government's only chosen one option, which was in the earlier questions. So why would you ask the government to comment on things they haven't done? Or maybe reword the question a different way.
Well, it was
question, supplementary.
Thank you. Why did the Cabinet paper treat, quote, locks in significant new generation, unquote, and, quote, impacts the electricity market, unquote, as negatives in its assessment of biomass, when building firm renewable generation like this is exactly what is required to deliver both dry year security and lower people's power bills?
Mr. Speaker, on behalf of the Minister for Energy, the assessment that was done was focused on what is the option which can ensure we can address the dry year problem in a timely manner. And the reality is it is critically important we do this as quickly as possible so that we can secure the energy that New Zealanders need to put downward pressure on prices, to reduce power bills for New Zealanders, but also we are very focused on making sure we have the energy systems and the resource management systems in place which allow for all types of energy to be produced through Fast Track, whether that's wind, whether that's solar, whether that's hydro, whether it's geothermal, whether that's biomass, but you need to have a system which allows for all of those backed up by thermal generation, which is critically important.
The Honourable Winston Peters.
Could I ask the Minister why he has not taken the questioner, Dr. Megan Woods, seriously, or does he not know about her doctorate when she got that qualification?
No, he's a lot of things, but he's actually speaking on behalf of another minister. He's certainly not going into the tertiary education archives of New Zealand to answer a question like that.
Question.
The Honourable Megan Woods.
Thank you. Did he get advice on net new jobs created each year, broken down into construction and ongoing operational roles of an LNG import terminal in Taranaki, compared with a scenario
Sorry,
when the...
just one moment. There's a whole lot of conversations going on while the member is asking the question. Please, if you wouldn't mind starting again.
Certainly. Did he get advice on net new jobs created each year, broken down into construction and ongoing operational roles of an LNG import terminal in Taranaki, compared with scenarios where the same north of $1 billion is invested in renewables and biomass-based firming instead? If not, why not?
Well, Mr. Speaker, we got advice on what would actually keep power prices as low as possible for consumers, and this option will reduce power prices for consumers and also, critically important, for industry, which the opposite side of the House were prepared to let crash and burn through high power prices. And that is not something that we are prepared to stand by and let happen. In fact, we got modelling which suggests that this would protect thousands of regional jobs by having lower, secure power prices for New Zealand households and businesses.
Supplementary question. Who is correct? Simon Watts, who said the gas tax will be more than offset by lower electricity prices, or the government's own infrastructure plan announced today that warns it's not clear importing LNG would lower electricity prices?
On behalf of the Minister for Energy, Simon Watts is correct.
The Honourable Shane Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Minister confirm whether any advice has been taken in terms of job creation, job destruction, and the number of New Zealanders that have been forced out of their industrial workplace as a consequence of the cancellation of the oil and gas industry and the destruction of Marsden Point?
Well, on behalf of the Minister of Energy, Mr. Speaker, analysis was undertaken that if we didn't choose this option, thousands of jobs in regional New Zealand would be destroyed by high prices across the industries in those communities. And on that side of the House, they're prepared to wait till 2037 to solve the dry year risk. We're solving it now.
Look, I think so much as there was content in the question that the Minister could answer, the answer effectively attacked the opposition. We're in a very interesting year and there's going to be very little tolerance from this point on. A point of order. The Honourable...
With the greatest respect...
Hang on, I'll just call you properly. We've got to do things properly here. The Right Honourable Winston Peters.
Mr. Speaker, with the greatest respect, why have we got this position you're taking that in this House, which is the Westminster system, you cannot refer to the inadequacies of either side of the House, the government or the opposition? That's all it's about. And I do not think we should be unfairly, how shall I say it, diluting the rights and powers of this House because you don't have the same view the rest of us do.
That's partially correct. And what I would make clear is that the government, in answering any question, can refer to matters that were, or decisions made by a previous government that related to the question being asked or to the bill being discussed or in a debate. However, Speaker's ruling 1813 makes it very clear that the government cannot use a supplementary question or a question to attack the opposition. And it's a fine line. I appreciate it. That's what I'm trying to work. And it's actually been the rule for a very, very long time. Question, no, or what? Not in the member's time? All right, I'm not responsible for what the member remembers or otherwise. The question number 9, Debbie Mauri-Wapaka.
Tēnā koe te pika. My question is to the Prime Minister. Does he stand by all his government statements and actions?
Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
Supplementary. Does the Prime Minister support the continued existence of the Māori electorates?
Well, that is something that we haven't given consideration to.
Supplementary. Does he agree that Māori electorates represent a constitutional recognition of Te Tiriti or Waitangi?
Well, I understand they've been a feature of New Zealand's political system for some time, but I also understand that what Māori voters want and what the Māori public want is a government that's on their side, actually delivering improved outcomes for them, and that's what this government's doing.
Supplementary. Is the Prime Minister aware that the number of Māori enrolled on the Māori roll has increased by over 13,000 since the 2023 election?
Well, that may well be the case, but the important thing is they have representation with the biggest Māori contingent in Cabinet of any government in recent times. They have a government that's on their sides making sure that they are raising immunisation rates for under 2. They have a government on their side making sure that their kids are getting off to a great start in education, and particularly around new entrants and phonics.
Supplementary. Will he rule out supporting a referendum on the Māori electorate so long as he remains Prime Minister?
Well, that is not government policy.
Supplementary. Is that a no?
Well, I've just said to the member it's not government policy.
Supplementary question, the Right Honourable Winston Peters.
If the Maori seats were worth defending, why is it that the people who preside in the Maori seats have spent less time in Parliament than somebody who's been overseas for 206 days and yet spend more time in Parliament than the Maori Party seats altogether?
Well, that is an important question. I think Māori voters on the Māori electorates have been poorly represented in this Parliament.
Point of order.
I would like that particular member to rescind his comment because he cannot prove that that is correct. In fact, the stats show that this member was in the House and spoke more than he did. It is factually incorrect what he has proposed.
It's just a minute. Just a moment. The only point I would make is that the Prime Minister has no responsibility for Māori Party MPs. We'll go now to question 10. Question 10, Chloe Swarbrick, and no one else is speaking while the question's asked.
Ki te Premier, e tautoko ana ia I ngā kōrero me ngā mahi katoa a tōna kāwanatanga.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Yes.
When will he respond to our letter from January in the wake of ongoing devastation from climate-charged weather events to restart cross-partisan work on climate adaptation with urgency?
Well, as I explained to the member last week, it hasn't stopped.
Is the Prime Minister completely unaware that his Cabinet made a decision in September of last year to delay all work on climate adaptation cost sharing until after the election?
Well, again, as I said before, it hasn't stopped.
Why is the government prepared to subsidise fossil fuel production and infrastructure, but not prepared to fund community-led resilience measures like the South Dunedin Futures and Tairāwhiti Transition Programme, which would protect homes and communities?
Well, it's a government that's very proud of $200 million of investment from the Regional Infrastructure Fund to support more flood resilience.
Cut. Does the Prime Minister want a managed transition where government works actively with communities to find the best solutions to adapt to a changing climate? Or does he want to continue with his current plan, where government makes ad hoc decisions in the wake of tragic climate-charged extreme weather events?
Well, I disagree with the second leg of that question.
Supplementary, the Honourable Shane Jones.
Does the Prime Minister agree that spending hundreds of millions of dollars on stop bank resilience work is actually a practical demonstration of how we cope with volatile weather, and also that it's work carried out by the local communities who look for confidence in the face of adverse weather events?
Absolutely, and I think the point I was making earlier was this is a government that believes in investment and action, not just words and talk.
Question number 10. Sorry, question number 11, Jenny Anderson. Honourable Jenny Anderson.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Economic Growth and reads, does she stand by her statement, quote, I take responsibility for my decisions, end quote, in the context of the thousands more New Zealanders out of work under this government?
Mr Speaker, yes, I do. I take responsibility for the steps taken to support sustainable job creation, including stabilising the economy after a period of high inflation, out-of-control spending and declining confidence. I take responsibility for our government's decisions to support job creation, including through fast-track projects, the Investment Boost tax relief policy and policies to attract investment for New Zealand firms and employers. As the member should know, unemployment is a lagging indicator, and for as long ago as the pre-election fiscal update put out by her former colleague Grant Robertson, Treasury had forecast that more New Zealanders would be unemployed at this point in the economic cycle. The member should also be aware that in the December quarter, most recent statistics show that 15,000 more New Zealanders were employed, suggesting the signs of a growing economy where fewer people will be unemployed in future.
If it is her responsibility to create the conditions for jobs, why are there so many New Zealanders who are still losing their jobs?
Well, Mr Speaker, I would invite the member to go back to the pre-election fiscal update, where Treasury forecast that as a result of an extended period of out-of-control inflation for 3 years, they forecast at that point that the increasing official cash rate increases and interest rates in order to deal with that inflation would lead to a significant and severe economic downturn, which would therefore result in jobs being lost. That has transpired, Mr Speaker. Our government's job has been to tidy that situation up. We have restored inflation back to reasonable levels. We have seen interest rates reduce. We are seeing underlying economic activity pick up. And as ANZ Bank economists have agreed in their recent note, we are seeing the signs consistent with rising job opportunities.
What is her advice to the 165,000 New Zealanders who can't pay the bills, want a job and can't get one? Just not to take it personally?
No, Mr Speaker, that would not be my advice. My advice is that for every New Zealander who is unemployed and wishes to have a job, our government is on your side and is working hard to ensure that there are more job opportunities for you in the future. We are doing that by ensuring we're managing the economy well, controlling our own spending to take pressure off inflation and interest rates. And we're also working to remove the barriers that have stood in the way of those firms, employers and entrepreneurs who want to get on and create job opportunities. That's why we're fast-tracking quarries, housing developments, new projects. That's why we have attracted more investment through the AAP visa to invest in new firms and new opportunities. That's why we support high-quality public sector infrastructure projects. That's why we've taken the Investment Boost tax relief to support more job and wage creation in the future. We're on your side, we're working hard, and many economists agree with us when they say that the underlying conditions are such that there will be more job opportunities in future.
What does it say about her ability to create the conditions for jobs when it's the hardest time in 30 years for Kiwis to find a job?
Well, Mr Speaker, it says that I came into this role as the Minister of Finance at a very difficult point for New Zealand, when we had successive years of a Labor government that drove up spending, drove up inflation, drove up interest rates and left the place in a joint and in a terrible situation. And it says, Mr Speaker, that those who wish to go back to a prescription of more spending, borrowing and taxing need to remember where that landed us last time. And unless that member has actually learnt the lessons of history and is saying that she wouldn't do that again, I would say to her that there's only one side of the House that is for sustainable job creation, and it's this side, and it starts with sensible economic management.
Does she agree with Mike Hoskins of News Talk ZB, who said, quote...
You're on the show every week, get it right.
Apologies. Does she agree...
One person speaking. When a question is being asked, I'd ask the National Front bench to remember that and ask the member to start her question again.
Does she agree with Mike Hosking of News Talk ZB, who said, quote, "The job stat for a government relying on economic credibility took a right hook and will be dazed. If not, why not?"
Well, Mr Speaker, what a thing for that member to quote Mike Hosking. Because I'm sure she'll appreciate that he's certainly had some choice words about her and every single one of the colleagues along that front bench and the mess of a job they did in government. But if she wishes to selectively quote him, I would also point out that I did an interview with him on this very subject, and he agreed that yes, the underlying conditions do suggest unemployment will be coming down, but isn't it a shame that people will always highlight that headline stat? But Mike Hosking, toe for toe, your team, my team, I think we know who'd come out on top.
The only person who has the floor is the Honourable Ginny Anderson.
Does she seriously expect New Zealanders to call it success when there are 165 people who want a job and can't get one and the cost of living keeps climbing upwards?
No, Mr Speaker, and I haven't used that word. What I'd say is that we are making progress and there's a lot more progress to make.
A point of order, the Right Honourable...
Mr Speaker, this is a great shame, but at a critical time when the asking of that last question, I would have expected you to help that questioner because she said 165 people. I'm sure she got that wrong, but you let her get away with that, so the question became pointless.
Well, that's true, but you, as you know, you take all members at their word, and if the problem is 165 people, I guess the government's not too concerned about that. Question 12, the Honourable Dr. Carlos Chong.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My question is the Minister of Tourism and Hospitality. What recent announcement has the government made about supporting major events in New Zealand?
Mr Speaker.
The Honourable Louise Upson.
Yesterday we announced that New Zealand will host its first ever State of Origin match next year at Eden Park. We've also announced changes to Eden Park's planning restrictions, which will allow New Zealand's largest stadium to host more major events like the State of Origin. These announcements are a triumph for fans, tourism and for New Zealand sport, with the event expected to draw thousands of international visitors and deliver a significant economic boost to Auckland. Tourism and major events are a crucial part of our government's focus on economic growth, and more world-class events means more visitors, more customers, more jobs and a greater growing economy.
Supplementary. Why is bringing State of Origin to New Zealand so significant?
Mr Speaker, the State of Origin series is one of the fiercest rivalries in global sport, pitting Queensland and New South Wales against each other in a high-intensity three-match contest. Bringing Origin over the ditch for the first time is a milestone moment for rugby league in New Zealand, inspiring young players and helping grow the game nationally. Our government and Auckland Council have worked together alongside the Australian Rugby League Commission to bring this sporting spectacular to Auckland.
Supplementary. What benefits does she expect to see as a result of these announcements?
Mr Speaker, the State of Origin is expected to attract over 10,000 of our Aussie neighbours and generate more than 50,000 international visitor nights and inject an estimated $17.4 million into the economy. With a significant Australian audience, this match will showcase Auckland and continue to put New Zealand on the map as a world-class destination for major events. Hosting this event has been made even easier because of the changes to planning restrictions at Eden Park, which means that nighttime games will be permitted on any day of the week and can finish later. Strengthening Eden Park's ability to host major events will mean more jobs, more activity for local businesses, more opportunities for people to enjoy more events at our largest stadium.
Supplementary. What feedback has she seen on these announcements?
Mr Speaker, the feedback has been incredibly positive. Former Queensland NRL player Jonathan Thurston said, and I quote, "Eden Park is an iconic stadium and to play there is something they'll remember for the rest of their lives." Across the House, this Leader of the Opposition said, "I think more major events will be good for New Zealand, including good for Auckland. I support extending the number of events that take place at Eden Park."
and Steve Gillett, the owner of the Kingslander pub and chair of the Kingsland Business Association, said, "This will make a huge difference for local businesses. Any one of those games can triple turnover." Really impressed with the government and Auckland Council putting their best foot forward and helping out hospitality at Eden Park and getting it over the line. Mr. Speaker, New Zealand has an excellent global reputation for delivering events, and I'm looking forward to announcing even more in coming months.
A supplementary question on this one?
Supplementary question? Is the Minister backing the Blues or the Maroons?
Mr. Speaker, it's going to be a really, really tough one, but I think my colours speak for itself.
I don't want to betray my particular sporting loyalties, but who cares? That concludes oral questions. Members who have to go to other business, please do so quietly. We'll take 30 seconds for those people who need to go to go. Oh, yeah, okay. You are? Yeah. I call on Government Order of the Day number 1.
Interrupted debate on the third reading of the Anzac Day Amendment Bill.
Mr. Speaker.
There are too many people speaking as they are leaving the House. I call on the Honourable Karen McAnulty.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. It is a genuine honour to participate in this debate, and anyone that has been following the debate will see that this is one of those occasions where Parliament comes together and resists the urge, as so often happens in this House, to have pot shots at each other, and takes the opportunity